Hey dudes and dudettes, it's Simon Hurley and welcome back to another video. Now I posted my review on the new MISTI stamping tool a couple days ago, and I just really covered the basics and kind of compared it to the last MISTI stamping tool. But one video that I really wanted to make was a really in-depth look at the MISTI and all the things that I love to do with it, and some things that I find helpful as I'm using it. I made a video at the very beginning of when I started crafting, about 5 years ago when my voice was about 5 octaves higher too. But I wanted to redo that video with lots more tips in today's video and really share lots of MISTI card making life hacks with you guys on how to use the MISTI stamping tool. I'll have the MISTI 2.0 linked down below in the description. I believe it's for pre-order right now, so be sure to check that out if you guys are interested. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Alright, one of my first tips or pieces of advice when you're using the MISTI is the MISTI mouse pad, or kind of how to DIY your own MISTI mouse pad if you don't want to get out and buy one. So this is the MISTI mouse pad. Now this doesn't come along with the tool, but I believe it's about $5 extra, and it's a really great investment. So it's a piece of foam on the back, and then it's got a nice plastic coating that's adhered on top of there with the grid. And it's going to be a really great surface to clean off once you're stamping. So it's not going to leave any ink residue on there, which I really like. And I actually tape mine down into the tool so that it doesn't move around at all. I just tape it right into the corner. Now one thing you could do to kind of DIY this is it actually comes with a piece of foam and some grid paper inside the MISTI. And so what I did with my mini MISTI before I got a mouse pad and before the mouse pads were even made, I actually ripped out a piece of this grid paper and laminated it. So this is a great way to create a surface that's easy to clean off too. No matter what stamping tool you have, creating kind of a surface like this is a really great idea. Alright, one more thing I wanted to preface before I get into the actual video is the magnets in the stamping tool. Now these have definitely upgraded over time. When the MISTI first started, there was 2 circular magnets and mine were always cracked. So this bar magnet has been very helpful to just have one. And what I do when I get it is I take a piece of tape. You can use whatever kind of tape you want. I find painter's tape or that thicker purple tape will work really well. And I just place the tape down, place my magnet inside, and then I fold the tape onto itself like this, and then I'll cut off any excess. So here, this just creates a really nice handle for the magnet so that when you're moving it around, you have a really easy way to lift it up, and it's never gonna be pinching your fingers since you're not grabbing from directly under the side of the magnet. Alright, so let's start off with the most basic method of stamping inside of the MISTI. So I'm going to grab a piece of my stark white cardstock, place the magnet down so that my cardstock doesn't move. I'll grab a Photopolymer Stamp, which this one happens to be from my new Posh Poinsettias stamp set. And then I'll go in with my ink and do some stamping. Now I'm gonna purposefully ink it up, not too great here. I'll stamp it down. And then, you know, if you don't get such a solid impression the first time, which has happened to me so many times, welcome to the bad stamping club. I'm gonna go in again and ink it up. And if everything is still in the corner here, I can then go in and stamp it down again and give it really good pressure to make sure everything is stamped. And that's going to give me a super solid image. And I can keep going in as many times as I want and get that really nice impression. This helps a lot when you're going on watercolor cardstock or papers that are textured too, that you might not be able to get a great impression on the first time. Another cool thing I'm able to do is take this and turn my cardstock. By doing this, I'm going to create kind of a mirrored image on the other side of my card. So if I go in here with my ink again and stamp this in that exact same spot without moving that flower, you create kind of this cool and effortless mirrored bouquet on your card. If I put a sentiment in here and colored these in, this could be super beautiful. Now let me show how to use background stamps in here. And I'm going to show a little bit of twist using my peel apart background stamps. So here is my red rubber background stamp. This one is called Swirly Ferns from my newest release. And I'm going to lift out this foam piece. I can then go in and start my stamping with my cling rubber stamp. And since this is a little bit thicker, removing that foam and stamping in the base of the MISTI is going to be the way to go. Now you'll notice this stamp's kind of coming apart a little bit. This is one of my peel apart backgrounds, and I usually keep it on the acetate when I'm stamping. But I can just place it in the corner of my MISTI stamping tool, press it down, and that's going to pick everything up really nicely so that we can do our stamping. Now when it comes to stamping a full background, I want the full background to be on my panel. And so I can't place a magnet here because that's gonna not allow this to stamp down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my ThermoWeb tape runner and just add a little bit of adhesive in the center. Not a ton, but I just want a little bit so that it's not going to move on me as I'm stamping, but I can kind of place it in the center of the stamp. Now I could just go about my regular stamping with this, but one thing that's kind of cool about my peel apart background stamps is if I peel these pieces out and stamp this down first, so I'm going to use some fake plant ink and go in here and start my stamping. And then I'll stamp it all down. Give it some good pressure. And then I can go back in and place all of these images back into my stamp. Just kind of puzzle piece it back together. Place all these images in. I can then go in and peel out the images that I stamped first. So I'll just go in and kind of peel it apart. And once that's done, these images are placed in exactly to fill in these spaces here. And I love that you can do this in a different color using the MISTI. If I was just doing this regularly, I couldn't do that in a two-tone look. But I absolutely love how that looks. So I'll just peel off my adhesive, and there we go. Another way to use the MISTI stamping tool is to do layered stamping using only one ink pad, but taking advantage of the way you can stamp it multiple times to get several shades of the one ink. So I'm going to use this simple beauty stamp set from Altenew. I love their layering stamps. So I place down the most solid layer here, and I'll pick this up with my tool. I actually have a whole video showing this in detail, and I'll link it up in the top right corner. In that video I showed how to use a darker color ink to make it lighter and to do darker colors, but let's say I went in with just this lighter colored ink, and I'm going to stamp this for this solid area here. So I'll go in and stamp that down. The nice thing about using the MISTI is you get a lot more time to kind of look and see where this lines up before you have to stamp it down. Makes for less room for mistakes too. So I'm going to go in with this second layer, pick it up with the lid, and I'll use that same Rosy Cheeks ink pad. Now for this, I'm gonna go in, stamp this down, but I'm gonna go in several times because each time you stamp it down, it's going to add more ink to the surface and really darken it. Since my inks are water-based dye inks, they're translucent, and each layer is going to make it darker and darker. So I'm going to go in here 4 or 5 times to stamp this down and really get a nice darker shade of that color. It really is awesome because you don't have to worry about having similar tones of inks. You can really just stamp it off to get a lighter shade and then stamp more than once to get that darker shade. Now I'm going to add some leaves onto this stamped image, and I want to add lots of shading to this, but some really nice kind of softer shading. So I'm going to go in with my Later Gator ink pad, which is a nice mid-tone green, to stamp down these kind of leaves and flourishes from that same Altenew stamp set. I'll stamp that down. And then, if I want to go in and add some nice soft shading, I'll go in with a darker color. This one is Fake Plant. And I'm going to bring in my ink blending tool. Now, I'm going to go in with lots of ink on that tool and then start dabbing it on kind of the surface. And this gives you a lot of control. If you don't want to kind of roll your ink pad on the surface, this is a great way to get a much softer blend. And it helps to be in the MISTI stamping tool because you can go in several times and build up that color to get the nice dark shading that you want. So I'll go in here and do it several times, and you can see that shading is really building up. And instead of being super dark because you kind of rolled the ink pad on and left a mark, this is a great way to get much softer shading and get a really nice blend between colors there. So if you just have solid stamps but you still want to get some really nice shading and variation, the blending tool and your ink pad and the MISTI is a great way to go. Now let's say I wanted to make a quick and easy Christmas card and I wanted to mass produce this thing fast. That's a great use for the MISTI stamping tool. I'm going to go in here with my brilliant Baubles stamp set that we just released. And I'll go in and find some that I want to use on my card. So let's say I'll put one ornament there, one there, and then I'll put a sentiment down as well. Then I'm going to go in with my Game Over ink pad and start stamping this down. And the cool part about this is I can stamp it as many times as I want, and it's going to be in the exact same spot on every single card that I stamp. So I'll go in here, stamp it for that one. I'll lift that out, move on to my next card, and then I'll ink this up again. And this just makes for a really super easy Christmas card. Now, of course, you could add little embellishments or emboss it with gold embossing powder, but this is just a starting point. If you want the stamps to be in the exact same spot every time and not have to hand stamp all of this, this is going to be a huge time saver to be able to stamp it every single time in the exact same spot in the MISTI. Another thing that I found a major success with this is stamping a whole stamp set at once. And I'm not gonna do this again here because I don't need a full sheet of images right now, but I'll let past Simon in a past video kind of explain this just in case you guys haven't seen it. I'm gonna show how to save a little bit of time by stamping a full stamp set at once. Now I've shown this in the past, but I wanted to show it with my extra large stamp sets. This is a really helpful tip that I think I've been doing for a long time, and it's been super helpful for me if I wanna take something on the go and wanna color lots of images in at once on the go as I'm traveling. So I want to show it with my larger images because here's the thing about these stamp sets. Sometimes if you just tape at the top and bottom, it can kind of dip in. So you want to make sure you add lots of tape to the sides too. Then I'll make sure to press down. And here you can see I didn't get enough pressure, so I went back in and I had to re-stamp it. So it's a really good thing that I'm stamping this all in the MISTI because I can go back in and stamp it all together. Now another thing that's really important about this is, of course, you get this really awesome sheet of stamps that I'm definitely going to color in and cut out, and you get all those sentiments too, which is really helpful. I love that you can stamp a full set at once and then head off to wherever you're going to color them in. Now one thing that is really nice is the MISTI Creative Corners. This comes with 2 corners that have magnets in it. You have a nice kind of L-shaped ruler. And then there's also some that are good for lining up different sentiments and things like that. These triangles come in good handy too. Now I haven't used a ton of these, but these I do find really helpful for my MISTI. Now what I like to do is with these corners, you can actually make it kind of stand out a little bit from the edge. And what's really nice about that is if I have an image that I want to stamp off the edge of my cardstock, this makes that possible. Because if this is against the edge, it's not really possible to stamp outside of there. So I'll go in with my jet black ink, stamp that down, and then I can go in and color this image. But I like that you have that option to let it hang off the edge. I think it helps the card flow a little bit more. Now the other thing that I find helpful with some of these creative corners is I'll take this kind of squaring ruler here, and you can go really anywhere along the edge of this, but let's say I wanted to put a sentiment down, but make sure that it's really nice and straight on my card. I can do so at any interval here, grab my stamp, make sure it's butted up against the side of that. I'll pick it up with my MISTI lid, move that out of the way. And then, when I ink this up, I'll know that it's going to be nice and straight and lined up on my card. And that's been something that I've struggled with for a long time. So these grid lines really help with that, but also having the creative corners or some sort of straight edge in there really helps to make sure that sentiments and things that need to be lined straight across the card are going to. Alright guys, we've gone through a lot today, but I hope you really enjoyed today's video. Like I said, I wanted to put out that release video first so you get all the information on release day, but I really wanted to update my MISTI usage video and share all of my favorite tips and ways to use it because, after all, this is probably one of my favorite tools I've invested in my craft room. I use it almost every day for stamping, and it's really great for all different types of techniques like I shared in today's video. Leave me a comment down below if you have a MISTI and what's your favorite way to use it for stamping. I would love to listen and chat with you guys down there. And be sure to give this video a big thumbs up and click that subscribe button down below if you never want to miss another card making and crafting video like this one from me. Alright guys, I hope you have a wonderful day and I'll see you soon. Bye! Am I gonna be able to reach?